Galen Eugene Thurnau, 47, popularly called Gene Thurnau, was an armed forces veteran and an air traffic controller with Columbus Municipal Airport in Nebraska, who navigated the skies with a smile. He was described as very friendly and got along with everyone. In his personal life, he struggled to keep his marriage afloat, with his wife insisting on a divorce after 20 years. He had nursed her through a life-threatening illness, but after she recovered, she said she didn't want to be in the marriage anymore. Devastated by the painful rejection, Gene requested a transfer away from Columbus Municipal Airport to Florida, where his family and friends lived. He hoped a change of location would help him heal from a failed marriage. Gene met Robert Dean Peterson, 48, also known as Bob, described as quiet, while working at Columbus Municipal Airport. Gene and Bob were opposites, but got along well. Gene was chatty and easygoing, but Bob was introverted, described as a loner. Bob barely mingled in the office except with Gene. Bob and Gene would often share stories about life and family, with Bob eager to become closer with Gene. Gene had 3 beloved pet dogs. Gene would share this with Bob, who praised the dogs, although he didn't like dogs and never had one himself, but would later purchase the same breed as Gene's. In fact, when Gene bought a new truck, Bob purchased the exact make and colour. When Bob received the news of Gene's transfer, sadness seemed to overwhelm him. He already missed the light Gene brought to the office. As Gene settled at his new post at the St. Petersburg Clearwater Airport, Bob would go on to send him photos of his empty office space back in Nebraska. In fact, Bob missed Gene so much, 3 months after Gene left, Bob applied for a transfer without tangible reason to also be transferred to the St. Petersburg Clearwater Airport in Florida. He was approved. Without notice, Gene watched as Bob happily entered the controller's office. Uncomfortable, he was unsure of what to make of the sudden appearance. On the one hand, he thought it was odd for a colleague to travel that far to join him. But on the other hand, he felt pity for Bob. Bob didn't have any friends and had a hard time blending in. Again, Gene and Bob would share a familiar friendship. Gene had barely settled in when he met Juanita, popularly called JJ. She too had weathered a painful divorce from her 20-year-old marriage and was starting afresh. Their connection was magnetic, but due their past, decided to take things slow, waiting 2 years before making it official. During that period, Gene became a born-again Christian and embraced his faith. JJ and Gene would go on to get engaged. Family and friends were so happy for the couple, knowing how far they have come. Gene and JJ were thrilled to settle down. They planned their future together, with hopes to build their dream home, working on the project almost immediately. The couple had 2 existing properties, which they put up for sale to raise money for a massive structure. After the sale, they bought a spacious lot in an upscale gated community in Land O'Lakes, Florida. Their dream home began to take shape. Bob also happened to be in the market for a new home. Instead of searching for his own, he sought to buy one of the homes Gene and JJ had for sale. The couple thought it was odd, but moved forward with the sale. But Bob had an unusual request. He wanted Gene's and JJ's used linens and other items they owned to be included in the sale, to which Gene and JJ did not agree. Amid the construction, Gene and JJ walked down the aisle in a small ceremony that included close-knit family and friends. Although Bob was not invited, he didn't let that deter him. He showed up at the event with an expensive Swarovski crystal vase worth $650. The couple felt suspicious about Bob's intentions, not knowing if the gift was to make them feel guilty for not inviting him or a gesture from his heart. Months passed, and their dream home was complete. Gene felt fulfilled. He was closer to his family, had a loving partner, and the couple even welcomed a child. The couple had barely savoured the serenity of the new house when Bob phoned them out of the blue. He asked if he could come over for dinner to gift them something they would like. JJ was uncomfortable with the visit, but didn't want Bob to feel bad, so she obliged. On November 1st, 2006, Bob arrived early for dinner, but to their astonishment, he didn't need directions to their new house. In fact, the address was programmed into his GPS. Gene and his wife had errands to run later that evening, and hoped their visitor wouldn't stay long. He emptied his plate and asked for more. The couple exchanged glances often, patiently waiting for him to leave. Just when they thought the evening was coming to an end, he announced that he had a housewarming gift for them. The curious couple accepted the beautifully wrapped box from him. They would have opened it later, but Bob insisted they unveil it in his presence. Inside the box was a leather-bound photo album. On each page was a glossy picture of their home from the first day until completion. The realization struck that Bob had been lurking in the shadows the entire time the home was being built. "You mean you've been at our house watching it being built?" JJ asked in astonishment. "Yes, I've been at everyone's houses from work," Bob responded. The visibly disturbed couple was preparing to then ask their visitor to leave, but JJ's daughter arrived. Mother and daughter seized the opportunity to get out of the house, leaving Bob and Gene alone. Now that they were alone, Bob announced he had another gift for his friend. This time, it was a 3-page letter specially written for Gene. In the letter, Bob confessed his love for Gene and how he chickened out whenever he tried to tell him his true feelings. He disclosed his sexual desires being built up for years. Bob also stated that he would not leave until Gene participated in Bob's sexual desires, including letting Bob taste his manhood. It is believed that Gene may have been so shocked and disturbed by the confession that he stood his ground, threw the letter on the floor, and ordered him out of the house. But Bob was on the big side and could easily overpower him in a fight, so he gently said no. At this moment, he pulled out a gun and pointed it at Gene and fired. He had prepared for the possibility that Gene would decline his advances, so he came armed. Hours later, JJ returned home to find Bob's car still in the driveway. She was upset and decided she would confront Bob, asking him to no longer visit. Entering the house, she noticed what looked like red paint on the front door and a bloody pile of blood-soaked clothes on the floor. Panic surged through her as she saw the thick red line go from the doorway into the foyer. Her confusion turned into fear as she ran to the room, screaming her husband's name and racing around to find answers. She called his phone but heard it ring in the house, but Gene and Bob were nowhere to be found. She then found the 3-page letter from Bob. As the painful truth began to unfold, the traumatized JJ phoned the police with her voice trembling in disbelief. Officers arrived immediately, flashing their lights on the love letter and bullet shell, hinting at a violent scene. As hours ticked by, everyone wondered why the men vanished in the dead of night. The police launched a frantic search around Bob's residence in Ellenton, and everywhere he could possibly be. When they arrived at the house, Gene sold to him. It was dark and empty, like no one lived there, but the police searched the place, hoping to find some clues on their whereabouts. It wouldn't be until 2 days later that Anthony, Bob's brother, told the police about his house in Safety Harbor, Florida. Why did Bob need 2 homes? Why was he silent about this secret location? As they drove into the compound, they were taunted by the unmistakable death scene. They followed the bloody drag marks to the bedroom, where they met a gruesome scene. Alas, the lifeless bodies of 2 men lay helplessly in the master bedroom. Bob was dead on the bed in his t-shirt and underwear. He shot himself in the face. Beside his bed was Gene's naked dead body. His genitalia were missing. Bob had dragged him into his room and severed it with a razor blade. It's hard to tell how things turned out between them, but the profession of love certainly didn't sit well with Gene. Bob may have been so hurt by the response he got that he couldn't hold back his rage. Authorities say Bob planned the murder from their former workplace in Nebraska. He was obsessed and sexually attracted to Gene without telling anyone. Before moving to Florida, he meticulously stalked Gene, tracking his every move with precision. Relocating to Florida was a strategy to execute the violence. As the case opened further, Bob's brother Anthony Peterson, who lived in Miami, told the police that his brother was open about his sexuality. He spoke to his family about Gene, but didn't say much about their relationship. Anthony was shocked, not thinking his brother was capable of such evil. JJ has since tried to move on, stating that she does not hate Bob, as she cannot hate someone who was so mentally disturbed. JJ has tried to spare friends and family the true nature of the crime. She has been open about missing her husband terribly, relying on her faith in God and her husband shared to make sense of the crime. Confronted with the disturbing truth, police have closed the investigation, labeling it as a murder-suicide case, insisting that JJ was lucky to not have become a victim. My thoughts and prayers go out to JJ and their family.